There's a question I need to ask you. It's not about productivity or whether robots are coming for your job. It is, what happens to the mind when it stops thinking for itself? The reason I ask that is that in recent research, when AI bogus information was given to participants, only 75% of the time, nobody questioned it. Think about that. When AI gave them bogus stuff, in other words, BS, it was only questioned 1 time in 4, and it was only overruled 1 time in 5. This is cognitive surrender. When we hand over our judgment and our decision making to a machine, and we don't question what comes back. I'm not trying to incite fear. I'm not anti-technology. My name is Dr. Andre Walton. I invented technology. I patented a technology and I manufactured technology. But this is not a technology problem. Now, I'm a social psychologist, and the problem I see in this research is to do with how we think. As adults, when we face a challenge, our subconscious scurries off to its memory banks to see if we've had a similar situation before that it can use as a template. We do it all the time. When we're in the grocery store, we don't analyze every box of breakfast cereal before one gets put in our cart. I know that my wife Robin loves a particular brand of Cheerios. My granddaughters wrinkle up their little noses at that, so they get Captain Crunch, and so on. This happens without thinking. Most of our daily decisions can be made like this, on autopilot, with the very minimum of thought. However, when the situation is more serious, when the decision is more serious, this is when we begin to see the problems in the weeds of our neural systems. And that is that this mental laziness can become a habit, despite the seriousness of the situation. And it's a problem that we have always had. When we were children, we didn't have the option of this creative thinking shortcut with the templates. We didn't have the templates available to us. We had no history. We had no bank of experience to guide us. Watching my granddaughters when they were very young, when they came across a new situation or object, I could see them trying to make sense of it in terms of their world, how to use it to add to their knowledge base. They weren't being judgmental, they weren't being binary, they weren't looking for the right answer. They were assessing all possibilities. This is creative thinking. And it requires us to look at the big picture, putting that jigsaw puzzle piece into the whole picture. That was how my granddaughters saw it. The only thing was they didn't have the picture on the box lid to guide them. As adults, we have tended to use deductive and analytical thinking in preference to this creative thinking process. So less and less have we used the neural pathways related to our childhood thinking processes. Now, neural pathways you can think of as muscles. Use them or lose them. And most of us have lost that in our 20s at least, when our prefrontal cortex was becoming developed. But the fact that we once thought creatively means that we can reignite that if we wish. So why do we care? We care because innovation and creativity is valuable to us. Creativity is the source of our social evolution. We don't have the iPhone, the internet, the jet engine because we've got opposable thumbs. We have them because we've had hundreds of thousands of years of curiosity and the desire to make the world a better place for our tribe. Creative thinking is a core human drive. And like other core human drives, from human connectedness to our need for food and water, If we fail to satisfy any core human drive, there can be negative repercussions. Failure to satisfy our need for creative thinking can lead us to an unnatural imbalance in the way we think. As adults, we have replaced very much of that creative thinking with an analytical, deductive, convergent thinking process. And that is the imbalance that results from depriving ourselves of creative thinking. Our thinking has become such that we drill down, we focus in. This focused thinking leads us to be like a racehorse. We see only what's straight ahead, and we don't step back to see the big picture. If logical thinking is looking through a microscope, then creative thinking is the wide-angle lens, and we need both of them. Sometimes conceptualizing without creating structure. We don't become innovative through being logical. We become innovative through making non-obvious connections. In my 20s, I started inventing things. A contact microphone for musical instruments, a system for measuring ultrasound to make ultrasound imaging safer. BBC TV featured my contact microphone, and instantly the phone started to ring. That was in the days when phones rang. There was interest from around the world. I was like a kid at Christmas. I had images of royalties and licensing deals going on in my head. And then England plunged into a recession. The phone calls stopped, the deals evaporated, and I cleared off the kitchen table, plugged in the soldering iron, and started my career as an entrepreneur. 12 years later, living in Florida, everything was booming. Frank Sinatra, Elton John, the Moody Blues were using my microphone. Business was going very well, in an exhausting kind of way. Then one day, just before the opening of a major trade show in Chicago, the phone rang twice. The first time was a weeping mother in a hospital in England. My stepfather had died. Me, her only offspring. The second call was from my secretary in Florida. My general manager hadn't showed up for work for 3 days. His alcoholism had returned. It was back to rehab. While the show went on, business survived, nobody noticed, except me. Within a month, I was plunged into burnout. Burnout doesn't often come overnight. It creeps in one day at a time. It drains your motivation. It steals your energy. It takes the color out of things that used to light you up. Gradually, I pushed away my friends and family, the very people who could help me. One friend, Tim, a journalist, wouldn't take no for an answer. Whatever I said, he dropped in to check up on me. He hijacked me to go for walks on the beach. He introduced me to a friend of his who was a meditation teacher. He noticed photographs that I'd taken hanging on the walls of my house. And one day he said, I need somebody to be a photographer. I've got this event to cover. I can't find a photographer. And no matter what I say, that he was like sort of, yes, Andre, I need your help here. And so eventually I said, okay. And I dusted off the Minolta and I went to the Palm Beach County Fair. And I met and chatted to some really interesting people. And the Ferris wheel made a very pleasant change from the hamster wheel I'd got into. I actually had a good time. Over the next couple of months, I regained my ability to sleep. And I gradually found myself realizing that life was actually worth living. I remember that recovery process well, and the important role that my photography, my walks, my friendship with Tim played in that recovery process. Years later, after I graduated as a social psychologist, functional MRI imaging was developed, whereby you can actually see the neural pathways in your brain light up and change according to what you're thinking. I was fascinated to see that meditation and creative thinking share neural pathways. And importantly, they're distinct from the ones related to analytical, deductive thinking. Now, reflecting on my burnout and my experience as a coach, I've come to realize that burnout is not just a function of work overload. It's a matter of how we think. My business-oriented world had led me to think convergently, like a scientist at a microscope. Precision, but no perspective. Detail, but no big picture. No creativity. Introducing divergent creative thinking can go a long way to redressing this problem. We can increase our recreation activities, increase our connectedness with other human beings. 250 years ago, we adopted that declaration thingy. You know, the one where they got rid of all those pesky Brits, at least for the time being. It was the original AI-free document, the one that Amazon would publish today. It was written not just on the basis of what existed, but with a view to what should and shouldn't exist in the future. An amazing piece of creative thinking. Absolutely no cognitive surrender there. So how do we reintroduce creative thinking into our lives? Well, has anyone ever told you to look up when you're going for a walk because it improves your mood? Well, there's science behind that. When we're looking down, focused on the ground, our field of view is narrow. When we look up, we increase our field of view. Other ideas from my recent book. We make subtle changes to daily routines. The brain loves novelty. It thinks, oh, something new here, wake up. And we become more alert and productive. Change your route to work, to drive to work. Change the restaurant that you go to. Or if that's too bold, just choose a different item from the menu. Think visually. If you've got a problem, map it, draw it. Get with the family to do a dream board of your next vacation. When AI gives you an answer, I want you to set it to one side and think of 3 answers that AI didn't give you. So use AI as a brainstorming partner, not something to surrender to. That child without the picture on the box lid is still there inside you. She hasn't been taken over by a template. She hasn't sold her soul to AI. She's sitting there waiting to be awakened. So focus on what AI cannot do that you can. Focus on your individuality, your uniqueness. Thank you.